Let's talk about addiction in prison. So many people commit crimes while they're under the influence or high, and the root of it is addiction. So let's talk about that. Over the many years of dealing with this subject, one of the toughest things that people want to gloss over or they don't want to address is why addicts commit crimes to get their fix, or why there's so many addicts in prison. The reason why there's so many addicts in prison is because treatment is not always available, or people are not serious about their recovery. So it's an endless cycle of people committing crimes because they're so addicted to whatever their drug of choice is. I ran a drug program for several years in a prison, so I'm pretty familiar with that. When you look at addicts, look at a lot of addicts, sometimes they come from families of addicts because they grew up in that environment. And then sometimes there's people just happen to do a drug, try a drug, and then get addicted. Um, in the rural areas, meth is a big thing. Meth and fentanyl are huge all over the United States. Back in the 80s, it was crack cocaine in the cities. The rich people use powdered cocaine, but all of it has a similar dynamic to it. People will do anything to get it once they become severely addicted. You have women that sell their bodies um, for sex so they get money. Anything to not be dope sick, because whenever you get to a certain point, you're no longer uh, wanting to get high. You're just wanting to get well. Um, there's a term that you hear a lot of times in the substance abuse community called chasing the dragon. And basically, chasing the dragon is once you get high the first time, you spend the rest of your life chasing the dragon to try to find that high again, and you never find it. One of the big things is people try to achieve that next high, and sometimes they start with one drug and then they plateau on it, or it gets to a point where it doesn't do anything for them. Then they go to something harder and something more dangerous. Um, I know there was an incident once in the southern part of the state where I live, where there was a whole bunch of bad dope in this town called Huntington, and a whole bunch of people were passing out, falling out, and they ran out of emergency services because there's so many people overdosing. They didn't know what to do. I mean, they just didn't have the manpower to deal with it. The thing about addiction and addicts, if it's bad dope and it's killing people, if it's bad dope, they chase that because they want it. And a lot of guys that I work with had been Narcan back to life many, many times. And you would think, logically speaking, if it's something that's going to kill me, I don't want it. But when you're in addiction, that's the drug you want because that's the drug that gets you the high and get you just out of your mind, so that the inner torment and struggle that you're struggling with, you could escape it for a little bit. The one thing I did find working with addicts is a lot of addicts have severe traumatic trauma in their lives. Something has happened to them. A lot of it is maybe they've been molested. Maybe they were in an abusive relationship. Maybe they had some type of something happened, and then they seek drugs to self-medicate and get rid of the pain that they feel. And people say, "Well, all they have to do is quit." Well, if it's that easy, people would do it. But I'm telling you, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "I think I'll lose my kids today. I think I'll lose my house, my car, my marriage, and all my money." And that's my mindset for the day. Nobody says that, especially women with children. They don't want to lose their kids, but it's just something that consumes them. And it's like one person told me one time, it's like he says it's like the devil gets you and you can't stop it. You can't stop him because people think, oh, they'll hit the rock bottom and they'll stop. Well, everybody's rock bottom's different. Everybody's rock bottom is not your rock bottom. There's people that think that going to prison is somebody's rock bottom. No, it's not. Some people think losing their kids is the rock bottom. No, it's not. Some people think breaking up a marriage, losing your finances, losing your job, all those things that a lot of people think is a rock bottom may not be. Um, I know that somebody else's rock bottom might be death, and they've done everything in their lives to try to stop it, but the only thing that stops some people is dying. And people think, "Oh, that's crazy. That's impossible." But if you've never been addicted, if you've never had a family member that was addicted, then you have no idea. There's people that are very, very good people that are having a substance abuse problem and are addicted. In prison, it makes it 1,000 times worse because there's limited programs for people to get off of drugs because you need to be in an environment where you can actually work on yourself. And in prison, it's almost impossible unless you're in a program that isolates you and keeps you from general population. In prison, some prisons they give out Subutex or Suboxone, whatever you want to call it, as a treatment plan. But if you don't do it correctly, all you're doing is feeding people drugs and making them worse because when they get out, they're still dependent. And in a lot of cases, they're even more dependent. They get out, and they're not able to get their prescription filled, so they go straight to the street and get straight heroin or whatever drug they can get their hands on, and that doesn't help. Actually, it hurts, and actually it makes it worse, and actually it creates more problems for society. And if society doesn't understand, or the politicians and the government and these places don't understand it, it's much better to fund treatment. It's much better to fund treatment than it is prisons and give these people a fighting chance to not come back to prison, go out and get a job and pay taxes. It would benefit everybody and actually have parents who can take care of their children instead of the grandparents because all the parents are locked up or in treatment or in the street or whatever. But in prison, you have so many illegal drugs. You have so much stuff going on that people that are addicted that are in prison tend to get worse because A, they're not getting any treatment and they're not in recovery. And there's so much pain of being in prison, people just want to stay high all the time to forget about life. And a lot of addicts, their main thing is just to forget about the day, the pain of the day, what's going on, what they've lost. And for them, it's just a matter of get high, stay high, and forget about life. Forget about the hurt and pain of the sexual abuse. Forget about the hurt and pain of the divorce. Forget about the hurt and pain of losing your house, losing your kids, losing everything in life that meant anything. It takes your health. It takes your dental. It takes so much. And if you're not willing to work on that, then you're never going to be able to recover. AA and NA meetings on the street, in the facility, those are things that help. But the person has to want to change and want to go through the pain and go through the day to day of everyday work on themselves. Because once you're addicted to anything, you have to work on it every single day. And I used to tell a lot of the guys that I work with, don't look out too far ahead. Don't plan a year, 2, 5 years. Sometimes you got to just make it through the next 15 minutes. Sometimes you just got to make it through the next half an hour or an hour. And if you break it down to small chunks, then you can manage it better. Because a lot of times addicts get overwhelmed and they hit the fuck it button and say, fuck it, I'm gonna go get high and worry about the rest whenever I come down off the high. And that's the worst thing in the world for anybody to do. But the toxicity of being in prison and being an addict is just 10 times worse, because you're around a whole bunch of negative people that don't want you to get better, and they want to make sure that they keep you down and keep you with them bitter and hopeless. So, not just for people incarcerated, but people that's not. People, places, and things is everything. And if you can get out of that space and work on yourself every day, one day at a time, as they say, you'll have a shot. But always remember, if you stay on the other side, you're going to have a better shot at getting better.